It's pretty wild, right? Like how connected everything is in our bodies. We think brain, master control, but the heart has its own whole nervous system thing going on, sending signals, receiving them. Makes you wonder if we could actually like hack our heart rate, like tap into those controls.
Whoa, I mean, that is a really interesting thought. And it kind of gets right to the core of what we're looking at today. We're going to deep dive into this new study. It looks at how the nervous system, specifically how it affects the heart, especially when oxygen levels go down. Hypoxia, when your tissues aren't getting enough oxygen.
Yeah, exactly. And this isn't just like some theory, right? This is real deal research. Straight out of the journal, Nature Scientific Reports. And it comes from a group at the Institute of Heart Diseases over at the Wrocław Medical University.
Yeah,
Lead author, Dr. Piotr Nowiński, along with Dr. Stanisław Tubek, Dr. Krzysztof Nowak, and Professor Piotr Ponikowski.
right, exactly. And they wanted to figure out, well, we're going to try and unpack it for you guys too, but they wanted to figure out the role of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
That rest and digest system, how it plays into what the heart does when oxygen gets low. Most people probably think it's all about that fight or flight response, right?
Totally. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Like
Yeah.
when oxygen's low, boom. Sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system kicks in, heart speeds up, trying to get that oxygen pumping. It's that natural stress response, like slamming on the gas.
Yeah, it is. It is a survival thing for sure. But what this research really shows is the parasympathetic nervous system's role in all this. We knew it slowed things down,
Right.
but what it does when your body's like, whoa, low oxygen, that's been kind of murky.
Okay, so how did Dr. Nowinski and his team like even start to figure this out? How did they get at this rest and digest system under stress?
So they used this kind of different method. They looked at what happens after a procedure called parasympathetic cardio-neuro ablation, PCNA for short. It basically dials down the vagus nerve's activity.
Right.
That vagus nerve. Big player in the parasympathetic systems, like the body's built-in wall-there slow-down signal, especially for the heart.
Okay, so PCNA, that procedure, it's like taking your foot off the brake a little, but why do that when you're studying low oxygen? What was the link?
Right, so they use PCNA as a model to see what happens when that brake isn't working so well when you don't have enough oxygen. By looking at patients who had this procedure for a specific reason,
Right.
they could see how a weaker parasympathetic system affected the heart's reaction to, hypoxia.
Gotcha. And who were these patients? Why did they need that brake eased up in the first place?
They had 11 patients who had PCNA to treat what's called vasovagal syncope. This is when the vagus nerve goes overboard. It makes your heart rate and blood pressure plummet suddenly. You can faint. So in these folks, the vagus nerve was like a super sensitive brake, causing real problems.
So dialing down that vagus nerve was the treatment for them.
Right.
And then that gave Dr. Nowinski's team a chance to see, well, how does the heart deal with low oxygen without that strong brake? What did the hypoxia tests look like?
All right, so before and after the PCNA, the patients did these hypoxia tests. They breathed in nitrogen. It lowers your blood oxygen temporarily. While that was happening, the researchers tracked all their vitals. Heart rate, blood pressure, how fast they were breathing, their blood oxygen saturation. They wanted to see how the heart adjusted to not having enough oxygen, both before and after the vagus nerve got tuned down.
And it wasn't just those tests, right? They did something else to really zero in on the parasympathetic system.
Yeah, you're right. After each test, they gave the patients atropine. Now, atropine blocks the vagus nerve's effect on the heart. By giving it before and after the PCNA, they could really precisely measure the parasympathetic system's impact, with it working full force and then with it dialed down, like a before and after for that break.
Clever way to see what's what. They were looking at some specific things to see how the heart and circulation were doing, right?
Yeah, two key things. First was baroflex sensitivity, CBRS. It's like a blood pressure thermostat in your body. Pressure dips, heart kicks in to bring it up. Pressure too high, heart chills out. CBRS tells you how well that thermostat's working, how well the heart rate changes when blood pressure changes. A weak baroflex means your body has a harder time adjusting to sudden pressure shifts.
Okay, and what was the other thing they were looking at?
Heart rate variability, HRV. So your heartbeat isn't perfectly steady, like a metronome. There are tiny changes in the time between beats. That little bit of unevenness is a sign of a healthy heart, like a car that can adjust its speed smoothly. HRV measures that flexibility. High HRV, good. The heart can handle different demands. Low HRV can sometimes mean problems with the nervous system or the heart.
Okay, they dialed down the brake with PCNA, then they looked at how the heart handled low oxygen, and they measured those two things, CBRS and HRV. What was the big news from this study? What'd they learn about that parasympathetic system?
The big takeaway, they confirmed that the parasympathetic system is super important for controlling heart rate, when oxygen is low.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the sympathetic system revs things up, but this study, it was called Cardiac Parasympathetic Denervation Reduces Hypoxic Tachycardia, Baroreflex Sensitivity, and Heart Rate, showed that what the parasympathetic system does or doesn't do after PCA is just as important. It's not just passively letting the sympathetic system do its thing, it's actively involved in how the heart handles low oxygen.
That changes things, huh? So what specific changes did they see after we did the PCNA? How did weakening that vagus nerve change things when oxygen levels dropped?
They saw a few things. First, the heart rate didn't jump up as much when oxygen was low. Usually the heart speeds up to deliver more oxygen. After PCNA, that speed boost was way less, like weakening the parasympathetic system messed with that response.
Okay.
Second thing, they saw HRV go down. So imagine the heart's rhythm gets less flexible. It's not adjusting as smoothly. That's what low HRV means. The heart might not be able to handle different stresses as well. And last, the baroreflex sensitivity got weaker. Like the heart's ability to quickly adjust and keep blood pressure steady got worse.
So it sounds like easing up on the brake had some maybe not so great side effects on how the heart handles stress. What about the gas pedal, though, the sympathetic nervous system? Did PCNA affect that?
That's interesting, right? So they checked the highest heart rate they could get after giving atropine, which basically shuts off the parasympathetic system completely. And that max heart rate stayed pretty much the same after PCNA, meaning the sympathetic system, the gas pedal, didn't really change much because of the PCNA. That's really important because it means that it was the change in the parasympathetic system that was driving those changes we saw in how the heart reacted to low oxygen. If the sympathetic system was the main player, PCA wouldn't have made such a big difference.
This is definitely changing how we think about how the heart keeps its rhythm, especially under pressure. It's not just one system running the show. So for patients with vasovagal syncope who actually benefit from PCNA, are there downsides to these findings? You know, the lower HRV and baroreflex sensitivity?
That's the million-dollar question, right? So PCNA can really improve life for people with bad vasovagal syncope. Less fainting, less risk of getting hurt. But this study does point to some possible long-term risks. Those lower HRV and CBRS numbers are a flag. Lower HRV has been linked to higher chances of heart problems and a weaker baroreflex. That can make it harder for the body to keep blood pressure steady over time. It's like you solve one problem, but you got to watch out for others down the road.
So it's a balancing act, relief from a tough condition, but maybe some impacts on other parts of heart health? So does that mean PCNA is good for anyone with a slow heartbeat?
Oh, no, not at all. Dr. Nowiński and the researchers, they were really clear. PCNA is only right when the problem is an overactive vagus nerve. It doesn't work for slow heartbeats caused by heart damage itself, like in older patients who have heart failure or myocarditis or problems with the sinus node. They might need a pacemaker to get their heart rhythm on track.
Makes sense. So how do doctors know if it's a vagus nerve problem or a heart problem? How do they decide if PCNA is the way to do?
The atropine test is key. So if a patient's heart rate jumps up a lot after getting atropine, remember that blocks the vagus nerve, it's a good sign that the vagus nerve is the troublemaker. PCA could be a good option. But if the heart rate doesn't really change after atropine, that probably means the problem's in the heart itself. PCA wouldn't work. Dr. Nowiński said if there's no response to atropine, PCA is off the table.
This study raises some really interesting questions, but it sounds like there's still so much to learn. What's next for Dr. Nowiński and his team? What are they going to look at now?
Oh, they've got a lot in the works. One big thing is finding a way to dial down the vagus nerve just enough to stop the syncope, but without messing up the HRV and CBRS, like a fine-tuning approach. Dr. Nowiński mentioned they're doing a study on that, like how to make PCNA more precise.
Wow, that sounds pretty tricky. What else are they hoping to find out?
Well, they're really interested in what PCNA does in the long run. You know, how it affects the heart and blood vessels over time. Dr. Nowiński said they've got a paper under review. It looks at what happens 12 months after PCNA. Early results suggest it might cause some long-term problems with how the heart regulates its rate because that vagus nerve isn't working at full capacity. They also want to do more research on how much they actually need to denervate the parasympathetic system during PCNA. You know, does a little denervation work as well as a lot, and how does that affect how well it prevents syncope in the long run? And then, get this, they're looking into using vagus nerve stimulation during the procedure to see right then and there how well the denervation is working, like real-time feedback.
It really makes you realize how complicated our hearts are and how much more there is to learn. PCNA seems promising for some people, but we need more research to get it right, to make sure it's helping and not hurting in the long run.
Yeah, totally. This is just the tip of the iceberg in cardiology. PCA could be a huge help for the right patients, but the goal is to use it wisely, to find that sweet spot between treating syncope and keeping the heart's control system working as best it can.
So for you listening, here's the takeaway from this deep dive into the work of Dr. Nowiński, Dr. Tubek, Dr. Nowak, and Professor Ponikowski from the Wrocław Medical University, published in Nature Scientific Reports.
Ready?
That rest and digest system, the parasympathetic nervous system, it's way more important for how your heart reacts to low oxygen than we thought. And weakening it, even though it helps some people, like those with really bad vasovagal syncope, it can really change how your heart works and regulates itself.
Totally. This research on PCNA shows how important that balance is between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. They both control our heart rhythm. And it shows that the parasympathetic system isn't just a passive brake. It's actively involved in how the heart deals with stress, like, hypoxia.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If these two systems that seem like opposites are actually working together, what other seemingly opposite systems in our bodies might be connected in ways we don't even understand yet? It makes you really appreciate how complex and balanced everything is inside